Today is our second video in the Lengthening and Collecting series, and in the first video we gave you an explanation of what lengthening and collecting is, and we gave you a little bit of a demonstration at a trot with several different horses. And so now in the next couple of videos we're going to start to show you how you develop that in your horse and what your cues are and all those sorts of things. And so today I'm going to show you an exercise we do to help build the horse's muscles to put him in a lengthened, rounded frame. We're going to start on the ground, and then in the next video we'll work on that in the saddle. It's better to get your lengthening first from the ground, how I'm going to show you with the straightness training, and that's going to build up your horse's top line, and it's going to get them using their abs and prepare their muscles so their collection is going to be much better if you start here first. And so whether you're collecting yet or not, it's really best to start here on the ground with this exercise, and you can't do too much of it. Really, it's so great for your horses building up their top line. And you'll see some different builds here, horses that are more or less muscled. We're going to show you today. And a lot of the horses that I'm going to show you are horses that really need this work. And like I said, you can't do enough of it. It's really great for your horse's body. What you're going to want to use for today's exercise, I like to use a dressage size whip. Lunge whips usually are a little too big and they kind of get tangled up in the way. A crop is too small, but just kind of a trick training whip or a dressage size whip works good. And then I also recommend like a nylon halter like this. The rope halters tend to pull too tight, the knots tighten and they get out of place and those sorts of things. And so I really prefer to use a nylon type of halter for the straightness training. And what you're going to do is we're going to ask our horse to go forward and down. And I want to be very careful that you don't get this confused with hyperflexion or the roll curve, which is very bad, where they bring their horse's noses, chin to the chest. And what we're looking for is a long and low, like I like to call it, or some call it forward down, or deep and round, or long, deep and round. And you're looking basically for the horse to come down, just like that. Okay? And if your horse has done some work like in a curb bit or something, or if you do a lot of groundwork working with your halter, then you won't have too much trouble with that. You know, a horse, especially like I said, if it's working a shank bit and it knows how to release pressure on the pole, then you're not going to have a lot of trouble with this. But if you haven't done a lot of that and you know, just working a snaffle or whatever, you may find that your horse doesn't know how to give to pressure on the pole. And so I'll show you later with another horse some exercises that you can do to get them understanding that a little bit better. But Cheyenne's been doing this exercise for a long time and she's pretty good at it. And what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and show you my cues, and I'm going to start on at a stop. Here. Okay. And what I like to give as a cue, and you don't have to do it this way, this is just what I find works really well for me, but I just touch my whip right to my horse's hip right here. And it's just, I just hold it there. I don't tap them or hit them or anything like that. I just touch it, and that's just going to be my horse's cue. That all right? Right now I'm going to ask you for long and low. So I touch it here, and then I put pressure on the halter, and she comes down, and I release both. And make sure that you take the whip off just as well so they connect, that the touch of the whip here is what I'm talking about over here, and you get both released when you bring your head down. And like I said again, you really want to be careful that it's a down and out and not so much curling back. So after you've got it really good on both sides at a stop, we'll go ahead and check the other side here. And all I'm really doing with the halter, I'm just holding right about here, right about where the square buckle is on the noseband, and I'm just putting some even pressure down. Good girl. And it, like I said, release right when they give and come down. And it's going to start very, very small at first. And you just give even if they just have a little bit of drop, and then eventually you'll build up to where they can come all the way down. So now that we've explained to our horse what we're going to do, now we're going to do it in a walk. And first, in order to set your horse up for it, you have to get a really good bend, and you have to be able to walk with your horse. And so first thing, she has to be able to walk with me. And I'm just right here next to her head, but I'm not necessarily leading. I'm a little bit more in a working hand sort of position. So now, she's walking with me pretty good, So I'm going to go ahead and grab that halter, and I'm just going to ask her for a good bend. I'm not going to ask for long and low first. You have to have a bend. So I'm just going to tip her nose towards me with the nose bend of the halter, and you don't want to let that shoulder fall in. So I use the butt end of my whip, and I just give a little poke in the ribs or the shoulder and get a little bend. And like I said, you may need to use more or less pressure. It depends on your horse. And I don't really want her moving away from me or crossing over. I just want to bend. So that looks pretty decent. And now I'm going to ask her for a long and low. And we're going to walk together with it. And I'm not holding her head down. I just have a little finger on the halter. And I'm keeping her moving. And I'm keeping a bend. And if she pops her head up, then I'm going to ask her to come down again. But I'm not holding her down. She's holding herself down. I just give little reminders here and there. Getting a bend again. And I really like to do that in a circle. You can start in a round pin. It's usually really good. And you make sure you do it evenly to both sides, and that's going to get a lot more benefit to you than just doing it on a straight line. But that bend is so crucial. Like I said, I just use the butt end of the whip out here, or some horses need it on the shoulder, and just tip her nose towards me. But I don't want her to leg yield away or be crossing over and doing all kinds of funny things. I'd really like her to just get a nice bend through her rib cage, okay? Now, you have to do it evenly on both sides, otherwise you're going to make your horse crooked. So we're walking together nicely, and I'm going to go ahead and ask for a bend. And be careful when you ask for the long and low that your horse doesn't drop that shoulder in and you lose your bend. You have to have a nice bend first. And so you may have to focus on that for a couple of days first before you can go to the long and low, depending on your horse. So she's looking pretty good, and I'm going to go ahead and ask her to go long. And again, I'm not holding her down there, and she's been doing this for a while, and so she can hold it for a pretty long time. But when you're starting out with this, your horse is probably not going to really be able to hold it. So you'll see amongst the different horses that we're using in this video today that we'll pull out have different levels of strength. And so she can go round and around like that at a trot. But a lot of the other horses are maybe just starting with this, or they're not as strong yet. And they may just be able to put their heads down for 2, 5, 10 seconds and then have to come back up to their normal position. And all we're doing is changing our horse's posture. Just like you might have a bad back or something and you go to the chiropractor and the problem is you've got bad posture. And so we're just working with our horses to change their posture so they're better suited for carrying weight, so they're going to be healthier and stronger. Alright, now I have Spirit here with me, and we're out in one of our turnouts. And the main thing with him that we're working on is really changing his posture. He tends to be very hollow and throw his head up in the air, and then he gets upset because that position for the horse is very tense and it's more of a flight position. And so that's another reason why the lengthening and building up those lengthening muscles is so good for your horse, because being stretched out and rounded is more of a relaxed position. And so oftentimes their physical posture and position can have a huge effect on their mental position. And so that's what we've been doing a lot of with him. And I'm just going to check in with him at a stop again. Good boy. And as you can see, he has a little bit more of a tendency to want to come back towards himself a little bit more instead of out. And so we're just working with him, and as the more we do it, he gets more stretched out. And now that one was pretty good. Nice job. So I'm going to check the other side. And I always check it at a stop first before I try to ask for it at a walk. Good. Okay, now I'm going to go into a walk. And again, our checklist, first he has to be walking with me. Good boy. So now I'm going to ask for a little bit of a bend. And he over-exaggerates his bend a little bit. That's all right for now. And now I'm going to go ahead and ask him to go on. And it just starts ever so slight at first. Good. And then eventually he gets longer and longer, and then you're going to release the whip and the halter both. And you can still hold your hand on the halter, but you're going to release the pressure, even just the slightest hit. Good boy. Good. So now he's holding it pretty well. He just needed to warm up a bit. And they only need to hold it as long as they can. Okay, and so we're not going to force it down or make them hold it there. Just even if they only get a couple of seconds and pop it back up, just bring it back down. Encourage them to keep it down, but don't force it. This exercise, it really only works well if you can get your horse relaxed. And so if you try to force it and stress them out about it, it's not going to turn out very well. So we just keep them nice and relaxed. I'll ask them to walk with me on this side. Got a nice little bend. Not too much this time, which is pretty good. Good boy. Keeping your bend. Alright, this is Sky, and what we've mainly been working on with her is getting her to balance a lot better, use her body better, and really build up the top line. She's already gained a lot of muscle and is moving way better since just in the short time that we've been working with her. And what I'm going to show you on her, she has done the long and low before. We've been working on teaching that to her, but she doesn't have as much experience in it as some of the other horses you saw. And so I'm going to show you with her what you may have to do with your horse if you can't get him to release that pull pressure and come down. Okay? And the purpose of this, like I said, is just to teach them to release to the pull pressure. And then if you find, you're holding and holding and holding and asking your horse to come down, and they're just not moving at all, not coming down at all, and you don't know what to do, here's going to be your backup, okay? And the key is you're only going to do this only just enough to where you can put pressure on the halter and your horse's head immediately comes down, okay? So what you're going to do, you can go ahead, have a carrot, cookie, treat, pellets, whatever you use, and you can either have your hand here on the halter where it's going to be for your long and low, or you may even choose to put it on top of the pole and put pressure directly down, because that's what you're fighting with right there. So I'm going to ask her head down, and if she doesn't come, and she will, but when you're teaching your horses, you'll ask, you'll hold, and if the horse doesn't come, then you'll take your carrot or your treat, and you'll bring it down, and still putting pressure on, and then when they give to it, you release and give them the treat, okay? And you want to make sure that you're doing it really equally on both sides. So again, I'm going to put pressure on the halter, and if she wasn't to give, then I'd bring it in and bribe her down a little bit. Holding, good. Good. And you may not even be able to get them to go that low at first. If they're really tense and they haven't done any stretching at all, they may only be able to go half of that much. Let's go again to this side, and I'll just show it to you one more time on each side. So I'm going to ask her first. Oh, good girl. Good job. I'm going to ask a little more of her. Good. And as you can see there, like I said, it's important that you're stretching out and down. not just down. You don't want them coming towards their chest or anything like that. This side. And ideally, you don't want to always have to use this because obviously you can't do that at a walk or trot or whatever. And so you just use this just a couple of times, 1 or 2 sessions right at the very beginning, only if you can't get your horse to put its head down from the halter, okay? So then after you've got that down, like I said, 1 or 2 sessions at the most, then you'll have your carrot as backup, but ideally you don't have to use it and you want your horse just to bring their head down off of the cues. So then you can bring in your whip, and I just touch it to her hip, ask her head down, good girl. Off again, good girl. And on the other side, again, I cannot stress enough how important it is that you do this equally on both sides. Good. Alright, so now I'll see if I can get her to do it at a walk, and we'll see how long she can hold it for. Get a nice walk first. Now I'm going to make sure I have a good bend. And she is over-exaggerating in her neck a bit, but she's still in the beginning stages of straightness training, and so I'm not going to make too big of a deal about it. But I'm not going to push her out anymore. I'd like her to be a little bit straighter through her steps. And then I'll ask for the long. Good. And as you can see, in a walk, she can't go down as low as some of the other horses can. She's just starting out with this. Good. And she doesn't hold it as long either. Good. Good. Good girl. We'll try to the other side. Getting our walk first. Because if you have a horse that can't walk with you, then don't even try and hit this. You got to work well on that first. And we got a nice bend. And I'll ask for the long hip. Good. Good. She's having a little bit more trouble on this left side keeping her bend while doing the long and low at the same time. And so I just keep slowing it down for her. And you always just go back to the foundation. And so if you can't get it at a walk, stop. Play with it at a stop a little bit until you get that good, and then try your walk again. If you're not getting a good bend, work on the bend, ask again, work on the bend, and just keep going back to the foundation if you're having trouble. You never want to move too fast with your horse. Because the thing is, it's with the straightness training is not so much about teaching their mind what to do. It's more so about building up their body and building up their muscles. And just like if you go to the gym and start strength training or whatever, it's going to take time to build up the muscles. Now this is Fred, and we're working a lot with him, getting him to strengthen and stretch his back muscles. So, the two are walking together, and he's pretty good at this, but is building up strength a lot, so he can hold it longer and longer. So check it at a stop first. Good boy. The other side. Good. Another thing I'd like to point out to you, just for your coordination, is I like to throw the lead rope over my opposite shoulder. So if I'm going to the right side with him, that way when my hand comes down for the long and low, it doesn't drop off my shoulder and get tangled up in my feet or his feet or whatever, and it's not dragging or it's not up on him where it's going to fall over and get tangled up on us. And then if I switch sides, I'll I'll put it up on my right shoulder, and that way, as my left hand is guiding him down, it's up here nice and secure. I have it if I need it, but we're not going to get tangled up in it. So now I'll take him into a walk. Getting him in. Good. Obviously that's pretty over-exaggerated there with his nose to the ground, and that's obviously not what we want while we're riding him. But on the ground, while we're teaching it to him and we're building up muscle, I don't mind it if they put in a little extra effort, even if it's a little more than you want. And as we ride him, obviously we're not going to let him be a peanut roller, have his nose on the ground. But while we're working on the ground, if he wants to put a little extra effort in, I'm not going to scold him for that. As we progress and move on, I might correct him a little bit and say, well, maybe put that effort towards going a little more forward and a little less down. And you just work with them, and you meet your horse where they're at. And like I was talking about with Sky, you just gradually build them up so they can hold it a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. You're not going to tie their head down and make them hold it for 10 times around the round. And even if they can only hold it for a second today, hold it for 2 seconds tomorrow, and maybe by next week 10 seconds, and you just build up from there. And that's how they build their muscles up and get stronger and more flexible. So we'll go to the other side. Just walking together first, and then I'll check my bend. Good. Alright, one thing that you may have noticed with him is that when I ask for a bend, he tends to just kind of swing his hind out away from me and cross that inside hind leg over a little too much, a lot more than what you would want for a bend or for a circle even. And so, usually what I'll do with that is just urge him forward a bit, and that'll usually get him straightened up again. If you find that urging him forward, and be consistent with it, if you see him crossing over, swinging that hind way, or even doing kind of a leg yield, just really get the forward momentum back. If you're consistent with that and you're still having a little trouble where your horse is swinging the hind out, you may be on too small of a circle for them, and so you may need to move out onto the rail of the round pin, or you can go out into an arena or a bigger space and get a really big circle going, or even try it at straight lines for a while. Like I said earlier, I really do prefer it in a circle and getting the bend, but if you're really struggling with that hind swinging out and they're just not strong enough to hold the bend and the long and low at the same time, or hold the bend through the circle, you may even have to do it on straight lines for a little while. Just build them up to it, and then gradually get into your circle, or maybe do a half circle straight and another half circle straight. And just be really consistent with that, and then usually those swinging the hind out will pretty much take care of itself after that. So that's some of your basic groundwork stuff for developing your round lengthened frame on the ground. And make sure to check in for the next video, and we're going to show you how to get some of that roundness and lengthening inside.
Let there be